In 1962, as the world held its breath during the Cuban Missile Crisis and President Kennedy navigated the edge of nuclear war, audiences found a different kind of tension in darkened theaters. HMS Defiant, released as Damn the Defiant in the U.S., brought the brutal realities of naval tyranny to the screen, showing that the most dangerous battles aren't always fought with cannons. This wasn't just another war film. It was a gripping study of power, cruelty, and the fine line between authority and oppression. Here are 15 memorable scenes you never forgot. Moments of quiet intensity, moral complexity, and unforgettable performances that made this film a masterclass in suspense that lingers in memory decades later. 1. The captain's son being humiliated. The conflict turns brutally personal when Scott Paget targets Crawford's own son, turning naval protocol into a weapon of humiliation. On deck, the first lieutenant deliberately singles out Midshipman Crawford, the captain's son. The rank itself creates the perfect trap. As a midshipman, the young Crawford occupies the lowest rung of the officer class, vulnerable yet visible, caught between his father's authority and Scott Paget's ruthless ambition. What begins as standard naval discipline quickly transforms into calculated psychological warfare, designed not just to punish a junior officer, but to wound a father watching from across the deck. The tension is electric. Scott Paget knows exactly what he's doing. Every harsh word, every public rebuke, every moment of forced submission is theater, performed for the crew and aimed directly at the captain's heart. The young midshipman's visible discomfort, his struggle to maintain composure under his father's helpless gaze, makes the cruelty unbearable to watch. The crew feels it too. Glances are exchanged, jaws tighten, and the unspoken question hangs in the salt air. How far will the captain let this go before he intervenes? The scene reveals the impossible position Crawford faces: to defend his son and undermine his own authority, or uphold naval discipline while his flesh and blood suffers public degradation. This moment plants the seeds of rebellion. Audiences sense that Scott Paget has crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed, mixing family with hierarchy in ways that corrupt the very foundation of legitimate authority. 2. Lieutenant Scott Paget's introduction. The first lieutenant steps onto the deck, and the temperature drops. Dirk Bogarde's performance as Scott Paget is a masterclass in controlled menace. There's no shouting, no theatrical villainy, just cold, calculating precision that cuts deeper than any raised voice ever could. Every movement is deliberate. Every command is delivered with surgical arrogance. He doesn't need to yell to establish dominance. His presence alone demands submission, and his eyes measure every man on deck like a predator assessing prey. This is cruelty, refined into an art form. Scott Paget's tyranny isn't impulsive. It's strategic, personal, and utterly chilling. He doesn't just enforce discipline, he weaponizes it, using naval regulations as instruments of psychological torture. Watch how he pauses before speaking, how he lets silence do the work of intimidation, how his slight smile suggests he enjoys the fear he inspires. The audience feels it immediately, a shiver of unease that settles in the chest and doesn't leave. Viewers decades later still recall genuinely despising this character, not just for the duration of the film, but for years afterward. That's the mark of a performance so compelling, so perfectly calibrated, that it transcends the screen and lodges itself in memory. The tension between Crawford's quiet, humane authority and Scott Paget's ruthless ambition creates a clash that keeps audiences gripped from this moment forward. When these two forces collide, and they must, who will bend and who will break? 3. The mutiny begins. Without chaos. What makes this mutiny unique is its restraint. This is not a chaotic riot. It is a disciplined, tactical strike for justice. The sailors finally act. But unlike the dramatic mutinies of Hollywood, this one is deliberate and controlled. Led by Vizard, the crew presents their petition to Scott Paget, demanding better food, fair pay, and humane treatment. Their approach mirrors the historical Spithead Mutiny of 1797, an event so remarkably orderly that it was nicknamed the Breeze at Spithead because it proceeded without violence or chaos. Every movement aboard the Defiant is measured. Commands are whispered, not shouted. Men move with purpose, not panic. The mutiny unfolds like a carefully choreographed dance, each step precise, each gesture calculated, Each decision weighed against the consequences. This is not impulsive rage. It's the slow, psychological evolution of dissent, building over weeks of injustice, until conscience finally overrides obedience. The tension is unbearable, precisely because it's so controlled. The audience watches men who are terrified but resolute, knowing that one misstep could mean the noose. Scott Paget stands before them, confronted not by a mob, but by a wall of quiet determination. Will the officers see this as legitimate grievance or treason? Will the crew's restraint protect them or doom them? This disciplined rebellion carries enormous moral weight. The sailors are not anarchists. They are men pushed to the breaking point, choosing to stand together rather than suffer alone. History has shown that even the most justified rebellion can end in tragedy, and the crew of the Defiant knows it. 4. Captain Crawford's first appearance on deck. Some viewers remember seeing this film in the dim glow of Sunday matinees, clutching popcorn in theaters where the smell of soda and waxed floors lingered in the air. It was a time when men still read the Sunday paper cover to cover, debated baseball stats with friends, and the country was led by President John F. Kennedy, with the shadow of the Cold War never far away. On deck, Captain Crawford steps forward. Alec Guinness portrays him as a well-meaning but hesitant commander who believes in fairness and humanity. Yet his reluctance to confront his tyrannical first lieutenant creates tension from the start. Crawford has authority, but he's afraid to use it fully against Scott Paget. Every gesture, every measured look signals control and judgment, showing that true leadership doesn't require intimidation. The audience feels it immediately. This is a man whose strength lies in integrity. Viewers sense tension building beneath the calm surface, wondering how Crawford's restraint will hold against a crew divided and a lieutenant who thrives on fear. Some who saw the film decades ago still recall that first impression vividly, remembering the weight of silence and the promise of conflict to come. 5. The first flogging scene. Below deck, the crew assembles in tight silence. A sailor is stripped and tied to the grating. The cat-o'-nine-tails is brought forward. This is where Scott Paget's cruelty moves from theory to brutal practice. The camera lingers just long enough to make every strike land with sickening weight. You can almost hear the creak of the ropes, the whistle of the lash cutting air, the suppressed gasps of sailors forced to watch. The sound design makes the audience feel each blow in their gut. What makes this scene devastatingly effective is its restraint. There's no dramatic music, no theatrical screaming, just the methodical count and the horrible inevitability of each strike. Former naval personnel praise its accuracy. This is exactly how discipline was administered at sea, with strict ceremony and witnesses required. Watch the faces. Every glance between officers carries weight. Every sailor's clenched jaw signals the tension simmering beneath forced obedience. The crew must stand silent, knowing that any protest makes them next. Scott Paget observes it all with cold satisfaction, while Captain Crawford's absence speaks volumes. Will anyone intervene? The scene reveals the terrible balance of power aboard ship. Authority can become tyranny in an instant. This understated brutality makes the injustice feel real, immediate, and profoundly disturbing. How far will this go before someone says, enough? 6. Captain Crawford stops a punishment. On deck, a sailor braces for punishment, the air thick with tension. Captain Crawford steps forward, his hesitation evident, but his conscience won't allow him to ignore the injustice. He quietly halts the flogging, though his reluctance to directly confront Scott Paget is visible. The restraint in his gesture contrasts sharply with the rigid adherence to rules expected on a ship of the Royal Navy. This isn't just a clash of rank, it's a clash of worldviews. Crawford isn't just stopping a whip, he's reclaiming the soul of his ship. This action immediately defines Crawford as a leader who values humanity over protocol. The quiet power of this scene lingers long after it ends. Every glance, every pause, and every suppressed murmur among the crew signals the tension simmering beneath the surface. Men who remember films like this often recall the lessons of measured leadership, respect, and integrity, making Crawford's quiet intervention feel as important as any battle fought at sea. 7. Below deck whispered mutiny discussions. Below deck, sailors gather in the shadows, speaking in hushed tones as the weight of authority presses down on them. Led by Vizard, played by Anthony Quayle, the crew drafts a petition demanding better food and fair pay. Their grievances are rooted in genuine deprivation, not just reaction to Scott Paget's cruelty. The camera captures every flicker of candlelight on tense faces, showing how the mutiny does not erupt suddenly, but grows steadily, quietly, like smoke before a fire. Former naval observers praise the realism the conversations, glances, and pauses make the suspense almost documentary-like. The audience can feel the simmering unrest, sensing that loyalty and conscience are slowly diverging. Every whisper, every subtle gesture contributes to an atmosphere where rebellion is possible, but fragile. Some viewers feel films like this remind people that Britain was once a dominant naval power, a reality rarely explored in modern cinema. The tension builds with every scene, keeping the audience riveted to the slow, inevitable shift of power beneath the deck. 8. The conflict escalates between officers. As the journey continues, the ideological battle between Crawford and Scott Paget intensifies beyond the initial skirmishes. The first lieutenant begins to openly question the captain's decisions, pushing boundaries in ways that test the entire command structure. In the officers' quarters, debates become sharper. Scott Paget argues for absolute discipline and harsh punishment as the only way to maintain order, while Crawford insists that respect, not fear, creates true loyalty. Each conversation is a chess match, with junior officers caught in the middle, forced to choose sides without openly defying either superior. The ship itself becomes a pressure cooker. With every passing day at sea, the philosophical divide deepens. Scott Paget interprets every act of mercy as weakness, every moment of compassion as a dangerous precedent. Crawford sees his first lieutenant's rigidity as the very thing that will tear the crew apart. The audience watches this slow-motion collision, knowing that naval hierarchy allows only one commander. Which vision of leadership will prevail, and at what cost? 9. Captain Crawford confined to his cabin. Many men who grew up in the early 1960s remember spending long afternoons in quiet libraries or basements, flipping through naval history books or model ship catalogs, imagining life at sea. Families would gather to listen to the radio, sharing stories of bravery and honor, while President Lyndon B. Johnson addressed a nation navigating social change and conflict abroad. During a fierce battle with a French treasure ship, Captain Crawford is seriously injured. Lieutenant Scott Paget assumes command of the Defiant, and with Crawford incapacitated in his cabin, the first lieutenant's cruelty intensifies without restraint. The strongest man on the ship is rendered powerless, his hands tied not by rope, but by circumstance and protocol. Alec Guinness portrays this with subtle disbelief and quiet frustration, every expression measured, every pause loaded with tension. The crew outside continues its duties, unaware of the storm brewing inside each sailor's mind, while the first lieutenant tightens his control over the deck. This scene resonates with viewers who return to it repeatedly, appreciating how the film creates suspense without spectacle. Each frame emphasizes restraint, hierarchy, and psychological tension, showing how even the most capable leader can be sidelined. 10. The crew's moral breaking point. Below deck, the sailors begin to sense a line has been crossed. Serving the ship no longer automatically means obeying injustice. Every glance exchanged, every hushed conversation, signals the growing tension among the men. The audience feels the psychological weight as loyalty and conscience start to diverge. The crew grapples with a moral dilemma: obey the rigid chain of command under Scott Paget, or stand with Crawford, whose quiet authority has earned their respect and trust. The tension is slow, simmering, almost unbearable, as viewers sense that the next choice could shift the balance of power on the ship entirely. This moment resonates deeply because it is subtle but profound. Mutiny is not loud or chaotic. It is built in glances, whispers, and inner struggles. Men who watch the film often recall similar debates about leadership and ethics in workplaces or schools, making the sailor's decision feel deeply personal and emotionally gripping. Every second on deck pulses with suspense, preparing the audience for the pivotal actions to follow. 11. Scott Paget loses control. As the crew holds firm, we see the cracks in Scott Paget's armor. Dirk Bogarde masterfully reveals the panic hiding behind the lieutenant's arrogance. As tension aboard the ship escalates, Lieutenant Scott Paget finally begins to crack. Bogarde's performance shows subtle but unmistakable fractures in his arrogance. The calculated precision falters, his calm authority gives way to frustration, and a hint of panic creeps into his manner. Audiences can almost feel the air shift, the crew sensing a rare vulnerability in the man who has ruled with fear for so long. Could Crawford seize this fragile opening to regain command and restore order? Every gesture and expression heightens the drama. A twitch of an eye, a pause in a command, the careful reactions of the sailors, all emphasizing how close control can slip into chaos. Many viewers remember genuinely feeling anxious during this scene, recalling the slow burn of tension in classic war films. The audience is left on edge, sensing that the captain's opportunity is coming, but not yet knowing if it will be enough to shift the balance. 12. Captain Crawford's return to authority. As Crawford recovers from his injuries, the crew's loyalty becomes clear. They trust his fairness over Scott Paget's tyranny, creating a delicate balance of power aboard the ship. Every sailor and officer looks to him, signaling a profound shift in authority. The audience senses the quiet power of moral leadership as it triumphs over rigid hierarchy and authoritarian rule. Could the crew maintain this fragile unity under Crawford's guidance as challenges loom ahead? His calm presence, measured commands, and consistent fairness earn loyalty that fear could never inspire, reinforcing the film's central theme. Leadership is about integrity, not domination. Viewers see this moment as deeply satisfying, highlighting the contrast between Crawford's humane approach and Scott Paget's oppressive style. Some recall films like this reflecting the enduring importance of integrity and ethical decision-making, lessons that resonate across decades. The tension remains subtle but persistent, leaving the audience eager to see if trust alone can sustain order at sea. 13. The decision to fight the French together. The climax arrives when individual grievances must be buried for the sake of the nation. The mutineers and officers face a choice: die divided or fight as one. On board, the former mutineers and the officers unite against the French fleet, creating an uneasy but necessary alliance. Every sailor, whether officer or deckhand, is acutely aware of the fragile balance. Past conflicts remain beneath the surface, but the immediate danger forces cooperation. The tension is palpable, each order and maneuver executed with caution, reflecting the careful strategy of real naval battles. Viewers feel the suspense as every movement could either cement the alliance or shatter it entirely. This moment resonates deeply because it reflects historical reality. Mutual survival sometimes demands unity, even among those who have clashed bitterly. Nostalgic audiences often recall similar narratives in classic military stories, where teamwork and trust overcome personal grievances. Every glance, gesture, and command amplifies the suspense, leaving viewers wondering if this precarious partnership will survive the imminent conflict. 14. The naval battle sequence. The battle begins with real ships cutting through choppy waters, cannon fire echoing across the deck. Practical effects and precise choreography create an authenticity that modern CGI often fails to capture. Every command, maneuver, and clash of hulls heightens the suspense, showing the skill, fear, and courage required to survive. Former naval personnel and history-minded viewers praise the film for its meticulous portrayal of naval tactics, hierarchy, and chaos in the heat of combat. The tension is relentless. Viewers are drawn into the fight, sensing that every decision could decide the crew's fate. Men remember the awe of watching such sequences on the big screen before computers dominated, feeling the tangible danger of the sea and battle. Every moment pulses with suspense, leaving audiences holding their breath, eager to see if Crawford's crew can endure the storm of cannon and water, and whether skill, courage, and unity will carry them through the final test. 15. The final moral resolution. The film's conclusion is sobering and morally complex, rejecting easy answers for stark realism. After enduring relentless cruelty, a hot-headed seaman named Evans finally snaps and murders Lieutenant Scott Paget. But the consequences cascade immediately. Vizard, the principled leader of the mutiny, kills Evans in a fit of rage and despair, realizing that the murder has doomed them all. The mutineers are no longer reformers seeking justice. They are now criminals who have shed blood. Yet the film refuses to end in despair. During the climactic battle with the French, Vizard redeems himself through extraordinary heroism. Leading the crew in a daring fireship attack, he sacrifices himself to save the Defiant and secure victory. In his final moments, Vizard hears the Admiral's gratitude, a bittersweet acknowledgement that validates his courage even as his life slips away. Captain Crawford must navigate this moral labyrinth. There is no triumphant victory speech, no simple resolution. Instead, Crawford acknowledges the tragic complexity of command, the fine line between authority and tyranny, between discipline and cruelty. The film ends not with celebration, but with quiet reflection on the cost of leadership and the fragile balance required to maintain both order and humanity at sea. The quiet power of this ending emphasizes restraint, dignity, and moral complexity over spectacle. It invites audiences to consider how these lessons about leadership, justice, and the cost of standing up to tyranny might shape their own lives long after the film ends. HMS Defiant remains one of the greatest naval war films ever made, delivering unforgettable scenes that showcase the best of 1960s British cinema. From Dirk Bogarde's chilling performance as the tyrannical first lieutenant to Alec Guinness's portrayal of moral leadership under pressure, these classic movie moments define what makes historical war dramas so compelling. Whether you're searching for the best naval battle scenes, exploring films about mutiny and rebellion, or discovering hidden gems from the golden age of cinema, this masterpiece offers timeless lessons about authority, justice, and the cost of standing against cruelty. For fans of classic war movies, epic naval history, and character-driven period dramas, HMS Defiant delivers tension, authenticity, and unforgettable storytelling that continues to resonate with audiences who appreciate cinema at its finest.